So I'm not so sure that some of the transitions to some of these young prospects that are teenagers stepping on the ice with the Detroit Red Wings, NHL caliber players certainly. It'll be interesting to see how long Mo Seider's acclimation program is to the speed and the time and space that the Red Wings will be giving him, or he'll see, as compared to everything else. I think it might be a short window, actually.
Well, he has been in Detroit since he was drafted. He's played with some of these guys. I don't want to say played, but skated with them while they're
so many games without scoring a goal. And that's tough on any player. And sometimes you start squeezing the stick a little bit. Hey, look at Philip Zadina. He wanted to score in the Prospects tournament, did not cash in with a goal, although he did have several assists. But it's the same thing with any athlete. You know, you go through a stretch. It's a tough stretch where you're not scoring. You want to know what's going on with your game. And I just think if he gets off to a good start and chips in with a couple of goals, I think everything will be okay for him.
And Justin Abdelkader has proven that he can have a successful season. He has been here and had pretty successful seasons with the Red Wings. What do you think the main difference was last year? What do you think he needs to put back into his game?
Yeah, I don't mean to sound like a smart aleck here, but he's not playing with Henrik Zetterberg or Pavel Datsyuk like he did early on. I mean, you're talking Hall of Fame caliber players. I think this is it. He didn't score until the Red Wings' 12th game of the season. Then he scored like 2 or 3 goals. And then I think before he scored again, he went 41 games without scoring a goal. I know that was eating at him. And then you're thinking, okay, well, he then started, he scores 41 games in, and then you think, well, it's going to come in bunches. Then he got hurt, and he was shut down for the season. So, sometimes you just need to flush it, as Henrik Zetterberg used to say after a bad effort. We just need to flush this one. He needs to flush last season and get back to playing the hockey that we know he's capable of playing.
Exactly, and hopefully he gets off to that start. He did have a lot going on outside of hockey, though. He has a new baby that is just...
He changed his number from a year ago to now. He wanted a number 7, I believe, in his uniform. So he switched to number 67. Hopefully that'll help him out, but I like the way he was playing in the games with Detroit. And Art and I were talking, and I know, Danielle, you were in the conversation too about the Red Wings need to get a break on a few of these guys. And when he came in, he paid instant dividends for Detroit. The puck was following him around. He picked up a point, I believe, in 4 or 5 straight games. Scored his first National Hockey League goal. So he's one of those guys that was a really good surprise, I guess, coming in late in the season. And hopefully that'll continue this year. And if he can get those points down again, and he does have a scoring touch, it's only going to help this team go further.
He actually wanted 17, but Philip Hronek would not give it up. So he was trying to think of different combinations, but as long as he got a 7. And Hirose came in and showed that, and this is, we keep saying this, but this is really important, and this is what the Red Wings are looking for. They're looking for players that are smart, that can think the game and can anticipate well, and that's exactly what he did. He earned ice time last year. He earned time on the power play, and people like playing with him. I can remember Frans Nielsen after, I'm not sure exactly which game, but said, he's, feathering the puck to us. The passes that he's making are incredible because, they didn't know much about him, quite frankly. He was playing at Michigan State. So, he could be a real find for the Red Wings.
Well, it's hard not to like him after how he has performed thus far with the Red Wings organization. Now, let's go down to Carly Johnson on ice level. She has more on Taro Hirose. Hirose does in the upcoming season. Let's move on to talking about Luke Glendening. As we had mentioned earlier in the show, there were 4 alternate captains named yesterday, and in place of Nicholas Kronwall, it is now Luke Glendening. Guys, what do you think about that call?
Plays a lot of dirty minutes out there for Detroit, and his stock value really went up near the trade deadline. There were quite a few teams that were interested in Luke Glendening, and you need guys that are the guts and glue of the club, and he does everything from winning faceoffs to delivering a crushing body check. He can help out in his own zone and just does all the little things out there. And Paul Woods likes to use the term heavy lifting out there. And, he does a lot of the dirty work. And the good thing about him, too, is he can win faceoffs. And he's very, very good at that. Tireless worker out onto the ice, gives you a solid effort. And he's always been an underdog in his career. He's had to fight hard at every level just to make the team. And it was no different with the Detroit Red Wings. So he's an outstanding player and one of those guys that you got to have on your team if you want to win.
Well, we're not all fortunate enough to go to the University of Michigan, but
oh man,
but Luke Glendening was. No, all seriously, I was getting too much Spartan love up here. I was starting
Yeah,
to
I was waiting for it.
starting to go
I
into a
knew
coma.
it was coming.
But Luke Glendenning, and Kenny's absolutely right. He was at a prep school out east after he finished high school in East Grand Rapids to try to get a football or hockey scholarship. Billy Powers, the former assistant at Michigan, was out seeing another player on this prep hockey team, kept going back to Luke Glendenning. He became a preferred walk-on, earned a scholarship. He was alternate captain for Michigan as a sophomore, and then he captained Michigan's hockey team as a junior and senior. So him getting a letter is no surprise. But what is about his work ethic, and what I like about Luke is that he and his brother Joe the Show, are football legends on the west side of the state. They won a state title for East Grand Rapids, really good football players. He considers himself to be a football player playing hockey. He has a football player's mentality, loves to hit. But very early on, after his playing days were over at Michigan, he was signed by the Grand Rapids Griffins, went down to Toledo, perfect his game, and I think it was Jeff Blashill that told Luke, if you want to be in Detroit, you're going to have to be able to take face-offs. And he was not a very good face-off man at all in the AHL. 2 months later, he was one of the best face-off men in the AHL. Mike Babcock, who absolutely adores him, brought him up to Detroit. He's there, and last year he was one of the top face-off men in the NHL. I think for like 13th, 14th overall, almost a 55% clip winning draws. Every big draw that the Red Wings take, if it's not Dylan Larkin, it's Luke Glendenning. That's all you need to know about him.
And I know there may be some disappointment among fans that the Red Wings didn't name a captain, but wearing an A is still an honor. It's a big deal to have that A on your sweater. And what do you think that says about Luke Glendenning as a player?
Well, it just tells you what kind of leader he is. And every level, he's always been one of those leaders. And, you know, I know in the future there will be a C that will probably go to Dylan Larkin, I would guess. But it doesn't really matter right now. And I don't think fans should worry about it because you have leadership from the guys that are wearing the A's. And, you know, sooner or later when it's time, it's going to happen. Look out, Daniela. We've got pucks flying all over here.
I should have wore a helmet today.
But Luke Glendenning's one of those guys that, you know, you like to have him on your team because he's such a hard worker, and he does all the little things that some guys don't do on the ice.
Yeah, we're at center ice, and the Red Wings are doing a shooting drill right now where they're shooting at pucks that are at center ice.
Look out.
There's one that just came to us, and I'm now holding it to prove it. But Mike Green's out on the ice right now, and he's I thought he was waving at me and talking to me, and I'm saying, hey, Mike, what's up, you know, during one of our features. And he says, watch out. We're shooting pucks. Be aware that pucks could be coming up here. And he was right. Here it is. There it is.
Oh, man.
And it's very
You're
cold
going to have to
and
keep
hard.
that one. You're going to have to keep that one.
Well, you know, if we can't get the Ken Cahill Award up here to give to Sean Romeo. The Finnish defenseman that they signed as a free agent is out here, Philip Hronek. So, like I said, virtually everybody that's out on the ice has a compelling story right now, and I'm just interested to see how everyone meshes.
Dylan Larkin is out there right now, and he addressed the media a little bit yesterday after hearing the news of the 4 alternate captains. Like you guys said, he said everything he's supposed to. He's ready to lead the team, and he's ready to wear the A on his chest, and he seemed ready to go. What do you guys think about that situation for him?
Well, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and Dylan Larkin, when it's time, it's time. And,
right.
And Steve Yzerman feels that, you know, right now is not the time, and he has his reasons for that. But Dylan Larkin, obviously, this is his team, and it has been his team.
Oh, man, that was an art line. This is Dylan Larkin's team.
Well, it is, and
kind of a bit.
And that's not to say that there's anything against any other player that is a leader on this club that it's going to be wearing the A again this year. But you know, it's one of the things where if you're a captain like Steve Yzerman for so many years, you know what it takes to be a captain. He has an inside track on what it takes to be a leader. Not that Dylan isn't a leader yet, he is, but he just knows when the right time is to award that captaincy. Until then, it's a team effort, team leadership, and that's what it's all about.
I think Steve, and Ken and I know this from covering him virtually almost his entire career when he was a Red Wing, you know, there's a certain standard that Steve wants off the ice, and he doesn't know everybody right now. Jeff Blashill said, and Steve, when he addressed the meeting yesterday, he said, I just need to be familiar with these guys. I just really want to know them a little bit before I give somebody that responsibility. I think the interesting that Jeff Blashill said is that there's going to be 4 A's. The permanent A's are Justin Abdicator, which makes sense, and Dylan Larkin. They're going to be wearing the A's all season long, or until the Red Wings decide that they're going to name a captain. And then Luke Glendening and Franz Nielsen, much like Nielsen did last year, they're going to alternate between the road and home games. But Luke Glendening is an interesting case because he was a preferred walk-on at Michigan as a freshman, and then as a sophomore, he was an alternate captain, and then he captained Michigan's team from junior as a junior and senior for 2 years. So Blashill wanted to give him a letter because he thinks he's an important voice in that team, and that maybe giving him a letter would have him become more of a voice, be more comfortable to speak out in the room. So I think they love their leadership group, and we're not talking about guys like Jonathan Ericsson, who's been here forever, Mike Green, Trevor Daley. I mean, these are all Danny DeKeyser. They don't lack leadership, that's for sure, and so we'll see how that captain thing plays out.
Let's talk a little bit more about those guys. You mentioned most of them on the blue line. Danny DeKeyser and Jonathan Ericsson are out there today, and some of the young guys that are out there, Joe Hicketts and Philip Hronek, are also out there. So what can you expect to see from these guys on the blue line for Team Del Vecchio?
Let's start with Danny DeKeyser, and it's unfortunate that he was injured last year because he was having a really good season. When he came back from injury, he was one of the better defensemen that the Red Wings had back there on the blue line. And it was an interesting stat that we were talking about yesterday. We're talking about Mike Green being injured and Danny DeKeyser. When they played together and they weren't injured, their numbers were incredible. But when one was injured and the other one wasn't, their numbers went down a little bit. So Danny DeKeyser took really good strides, I thought, last year, especially at the end of the season. And they're counting on him to have another good season with the Red Wings and be one of the leaders out there.
In the not-too-distant future, Danny DeKeyser is going to be the elder statesman on the blue line. And he's 29 years old. So I think Danny DeKeyser quietly, a couple of years ago, he thought that he had a bruised ankle, and it turned out that he had a small hairline fracture in the ankle, and that really set him back. And when he did come back, he was out for what seemed like forever, an eternity, but it was a number of games. He came back, and I think in the first 10 games, he was like a minus 14. Since that time, once he got up to speed again, he has been a plus player for the Red Wings. He logs a lot. He led the team in ice time last year, and he does have a knack because he's a great skater. For a big man, he's a great skater, and I think Ken called a few game-winning goals in overtime. Danny has a habit of 3-on-3 of really excelling, so I think DeKeyser sometimes gets a little bit of a bad rap. He's a solid defenseman, and I think that he will just continue to get better and better and better. And once the transition is complete and DeKeyser is the elder statesman on the blue line, he's a pretty good leader as well.
And the other player, Daniela, you were talking about was Jonathan Ericsson, and he's had a tough go, and a lot of it is because he's had some minor injuries that have really plagued him throughout the last 5 years of his career. And when he came in, he was the last draft choice.
Mr. Irrelevant of the NHL draft.
And here's the thing I always tell fans is, like, name me another player who was drafted last that has played as long as Jonathan Ericsson. And it doesn't happen too much, so he's defied the odds. But again, he's an elder statesman, as Art was mentioning, and he's one of those guys that, if there are issues, people can talk to him, especially some of the young players. And I know that Oliver Kasky was skating with him and talking to him. And I asked him about Oliver about veteran leadership, and he said, yeah, Jonathan has really helped me out in the short time that he's been here in training camp.
Yeah, Ericsson's been bothered more by a couple of back issues lately, and and that kind of took him out of last season. As a matter of fact, I think last year for the first time he was a healthy scratch in a couple of games, but he was coming back from those injuries. I think that unfortunately for Jonathan Ericsson, because when he broke in, it was during a playoff series. He was actually a forward growing up in Sweden. His dad coached that team, and they had a rash of injuries, and they moved him back to the blue line, and he stayed. And when he came here, he really came on like the old expression, gangbusters. He did really, really...